Welcome to today's explainer. Going through the material for this one, it really hit me. We need a total mindset shift when it comes to our money. Instead of treating financial security as this chaotic, stressful guessing game, what if we approached it as a precise, logical engineering project? Today, we're going to put you in the role of the architect of your own wealth. Right off the bat, let's establish our golden rule, which is the absolute decoupling of insurance from investments. This rule dictates the exact non-negotiable order we have to build in. Think about it. You simply do not build a roof before laying the foundation. If you try to build wealth without a rock-solid defensive base, just one unexpected structural shock can bring the entire house crashing down. So here is our blueprint for the build today. First, the architectural blueprint. Second, Pillar 1, the shield. Third, valuing the human engine. Fourth, Pillar 2, the horizon. Fifth, the accumulation ecosystem. And finally, number 6, the integrated financial house. Let's jump into Section 1, the architectural blueprint. Before we pour a single ounce of concrete, we have to understand our master plan. The ultimate goal here is a load-bearing framework. We need a robust foundation at the bottom for risk management, which then naturally supports wealth protection, and finally looks all the way up toward a future growth horizon. The idea is to build a structure so sound that it actively protects you against sudden shocks while simultaneously accumulating future wealth. To simplify that master plan, our entire financial structure really rests on two main pillars. First, anchoring the bottom, we have Pillar 1, the shield. This is pure, unadulterated risk management, protecting your existing capital from sudden structural shocks like death, illness, or liability. Second, reaching upward, we have Pillar 2, the horizon. And this is where we manage the slow, grinding, everyday forces of inflation and longevity. Moving on to Section 2, Pillar 1, the shield. Let's actually start laying that bedrock by focusing on how we defend against those sudden shocks. When a financial shock hits, say a massive medical emergency out of nowhere, our foundational shield steps in to protect us, using one of two very distinct structural triggers. And it's absolutely crucial to understand which tool you're using and exactly how it fires. Think about the fundamental contrast between these two mechanisms. Indemnity acts kind of like a scale. It makes good on an actual, exact financial loss. You submit a hospital bill, it pays that exact hospital bill, right? It mathematically cannot exceed your ascertained loss. But a defined benefit, that acts like a giant on-off switch. It gets triggered by a specific event, like a critical illness diagnosis, and it just switches on and pays out an absolute, pre-agreed lump sum, completely regardless of what your actual hospital bills are. To have a truly solid foundation, you really need both types functioning together. Now, applying this to a real-world health defense, a smart architect will often use deductible frameworks to increase coverage on the cheap. But there is a massive, critical difference between a standard top-up and a super top-up framework. So here's the kicker. It's all about how that deductible acts as a threshold. With a standard top-up, that threshold applies per single claim. So if you have 3 separate hospital visits over the year that each fall just under the threshold, the policy never triggers. You're paying out of pocket every single time, which is exactly the kind of painful reality we're trying to engineer away here. But a super top-up, it pools your aggregate claims into one annual tank. Once that tank is full, boom, it triggers the payout for the rest of the entire year. This makes the super top-up structurally superior. It's an incredible defense mechanism against multiple smaller emergencies hitting you in a single year. All right, Section 3, valuing the human engine. With our health defense walls firmly in place, we have to size our life insurance bedrock. And to do that, we have to value the ultimate, most important economic engine in your life, you. We can mathematically calculate this using one of two tracks. Track A is the human life value, or HLV, which is fundamentally an income replacement strategy. Track B is the needs-based approach, which is more of an expense protection strategy. A super interesting takeaway here is that the needs-based output is almost always lower than the HLV calculation. Why is that? Well, it's simple math. A family's total lifetime expenses mathematically cannot exceed the primary earner's total lifetime income, unless, of course, you're running a massive, unsustainable deficit. HLV looks at everything you could have earned, whereas needs-based just zeroes in on what your family absolutely needs to survive and clear out existing debts. Once we mathematically size up exactly how much coverage we need, we have to pick our actual building materials from the life insurance spectrum. The main options are pure term, traditional endowment policies, and unit-linked insurance plans, commonly known as ULIPs.
When we measure these options against each other, pure term provides maximum flexibility and total transparency, all at the absolute lowest cost. On the other hand, endowment plans try to blend risk and investment, but as a result, they really suffer from low transparency and inflexibility. This firmly reinforces that golden decoupling rule we talked about earlier. Secure your defensive foundation as efficiently as possible with pure term life insurance before you ever start chasing investment returns. Keep the insurance and the investments strictly separated.
Let's look at Section 4, Pillar 2, the horizon. Okay, so with our foundation fully sealed, waterproofed, and load-bearing, we can finally begin framing the roof. We're moving from defense to offense. But up here in the accumulation phase, we are fighting a constant, invisible downward gravity called leakage. Think of inflation exactly like a crack in a bucket. It's constantly draining your future purchasing power while you're trying your hardest to pump expected returns into the top. Your real rate of return isn't just what your investment makes. It's what it makes minus when inflation quietly leaks out the bottom. And unfortunately for us, inflation literally never takes a day off.
Which brings us to Section 5, the Accumulation Ecosystem.
To outpace that severe leakage we just talked about, we have to install incredibly powerful, highly efficient accumulation engines into our framework. And the primary heavy-duty workhorses for this phase live within the Provident ecosystem. These are your foundational wealth engines, and they're divided into mandatory and voluntary systems. Breaking these down reveals exactly how each engine hums. You've got your mandatory employee provident fund, your voluntary provident fund, and the public provident fund. You have to watch the constraints, though. EPF and VPF share a tax threshold where the interest actually becomes taxable if the employee contributions exceed 2.5 lakhs annually. But then look at the PPF. Yes, it requires a 15-year lock-in, which honestly forces great discipline, but in return, it rewards you with pristine, tax-free exempt status. It is just a remarkably efficient engine for long-term wealth accumulation.
Finally, Section 6, the Integrated Financial House.
All right, let's step back and admire the completed project. To review our engineering process today, first, we sequentially poured the bedrock using pure term life insurance. Second, we raised the defensive walls with smart aggregate health defense. Third, we powered up those tax-efficient accumulation engines to actively fight inflation. And finally, we secured the distribution canopy to protect us safely through longevity.
When we bring this entire grand synthesis together, you can really see the integrated architecture at work. Every single distinct financial product we discussed today is perfectly slotted into its specific structural role. The term life bedrock, the health insurance walls, the provident fund engines running inside the house, all of it safely supporting the distribution roof overhead. Literally nothing is random here. Everything serves a precise, calculated engineering purpose. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to explore in your own planning. Take a hard look at your own portfolio right now. Are you just collecting a bunch of random financial products hoping for the best? Or are you actually building a consistent structure? Ask yourself, does your financial blueprint truly manage the sudden structural risks of today so that you can confidently fund the realities of tomorrow?